As long as 9,000 years ago, somebody sat another person down, picked up a stick tipped with sharpened flint, and drilled a hole into their living tooth. There was nothing to make it painless. Plants could dull and ache. But anesthesia, the kind that switches pain off, is a 19th-century invention. Whoever was in that chair felt every rotation, and the strangest part of this story isn't that it happened. It's that we know it worked. You know the other side of this. 3 in the morning, one small piece of bone in your jaw is the most important thing in your life. And you know how it ends. Something from the cabinet, a bad night, and a stranger in a clean room who points a light into your mouth and makes it stop. Take all of that away. No pharmacy, no clinic, no antibiotics. The situation for essentially every human who ever lived. So what did they do? Most people assume they didn't have this problem. No sugar, no candy aisle, no cavities. It's a comforting story, and it's wrong. In a cave in Morocco called Taforalt, archaeologists examined hunter-gatherers who lived 15,000 years ago, thousands of years before farming. Just over half of their adult teeth were decayed. They'd been living on wild acorns and pine nuts, starchy, sticky, and about as good at rotting teeth as anything you could design. So this pain is older than agriculture, older than writing. For almost all of human history, people were in recurring pain from a cause they couldn't see, reach, or explain. And what the mind does in that situation is the real story here. Do something for me. Put your tongue against one of your back molars. Under a couple of millimeters of enamel, that tooth holds a chamber of soft tissue with a nerve running through it. You've never seen it. Neither had anyone in the ancient world. And they still worked out something was in there. There's a Mesopotamian tablet in the British Museum that tells a short story. A worm goes to the gods and asks for a home. They offer it figs. They offer it apricots. It refuses both. What it wants, it says, is to live in the gum and drink the blood of the tooth. Then the tablet stops telling a story and starts giving instructions. Mix beer with a plant and some oil, put it on the tooth, say the words 3 times. So it isn't just a legend, it's an explanation with a treatment attached, written down so somebody else could use it. And the worm was never a stupid guess. Open a badly decayed tooth and the pulp inside is pale and stringy, and it moves when you touch it. It looks like something living in there. The theory fit what people could see, which is why versions of it stayed in circulation in Europe into the 1700s, well over 2,000 years. So, back to that drill. The site is Mehrgarh, in what's now Pakistan. In a cemetery of around 300 burials, 11 molars had holes in them. Not cavities. Holes, round, with concentric grooves inside the wall, the signature a rotating tool leaves behind. The instrument was a bow drill tipped with flint, the same tool they used to bore holes through stone beads. Somebody looked at that tool, looked at a person's mouth, and made the connection. And here's the part I promised you. The edges of those holes are smoothed, and the drilled surfaces show wear from chewing. These people didn't just survive the procedure, they went on chewing with those teeth afterwards. 11 teeth, 9 adults, 1 site, over centuries. That's not an accident, that's a practice. Though only 4 of the 11 show decay near the hole, so we can't say all of it was pain treatment. What we can say is that it was deliberate, it was skilled, and the patients kept chewing. One village, though. 9 people. That could just be one local tradition, except versions of it keep turning up independently. Slovenia. A jaw around 6,500 years old, with a cracked canine packed full of beeswax. The team who found it can't say whether it went in just before death or just after. If it was before, it's the oldest known filling on Earth. China. A medical text from 659 describing a silver and tin paste packed into a tooth. A working amalgam filling nearly 900 years before it shows up in Europe. Wherever people had a material that could hold its shape, somebody eventually tried it on a tooth. Which leaves one question hanging over all of it. Probably the one you've been asking since the first sentence. How did anybody hold still? And that's worth sitting with, because surgical anesthesia is younger than photography. People were photographing each other before anyone thought to put a patient to sleep. So what ancient people had was never anesthesia. It was something narrower and, in its way, more impressive. Pharmacology that actually did something. Clove. Crushed clove contains eugenol, a mild local anesthetic that also kills bacteria and numbs the tissue it touches. It works well enough that zinc oxide eugenol is still mixed in dental offices today. The active ingredient in that old remedy never left. It just got a chemical name. Willow bark carried salicin, which your body converts into the same active compound as aspirin. Look, none of that repairs a tooth. But it makes the night survivable, and if you've ever had a bad night with a bad tooth, you know what that's worth. And when it didn't work, the ending wasn't misery, it was death. An untreated abscess doesn't stay in the tooth. The infection moves down into the floor of the mouth and the neck, the swelling lifts the tongue, and the airway closes. There's a name for it, Ludwig's angina. And it usually starts with a tooth. Before antibiotics, more than half the people who got it died. And it was no better at the top. Ramesses II, with every physician in Egypt available to him, lived into his 90s with teeth worn to the pulp and a large abscess at the root of a molar. Nobody fixed it. Nobody could. So the pliers, the string, the barber's chair we make jokes about, that wasn't barbarism, it was triage. Take the tooth or lose the person. So how did the worm finally start to die? Not with a discovery, with a man who bothered to look. In 1728, a French surgeon named Pierre Fauchard published a book saying he'd examined a great many rotten teeth and never found a worm. And that the real culprit was sugar. No microscope, no new instrument. Somebody just checked. And that's the shift. And it was never really technological. For most of human history, pain with no visible cause got explained as something being done to you. Punishment, possession, a worm sent by the gods. And if that's what you believe, negotiating is the sensible response. Incantations, offerings, penance. That's how you deal with something that has intentions. What changed is that people started treating the body as a machine instead. Something you can open up and look inside with causes that are dull and physical and repeatable. Which brings you back to 3 in the morning. What separates you from the person at Mehrgarh isn't intelligence, and it definitely isn't courage. They sat down for a flint drill in a living tooth with nothing to take the edge off. It's inherited context. They had the tool. They didn't have the idea that the cause was ordinary. They weren't wrong because they were primitive. They were wrong because they reasoned carefully from the only evidence available, and it pointed to a worm. So the honest question isn't how anyone believed something so strange. It's which of our own worms nobody has thought to check for yet.